All right, hello, greetings and salutations. Welcome to another episode of the movie discussion Pocket Dimension, where time does not exist and the only thing that matters is film. As always, I am Cole with my esteemed colleague Jay. We're here to have another discussion, and my phone is ringing for some goddamn reason, and there we go about that. That was kind of unexpected, but anyway, yes, another. Oh, you gotta be fucking kidding me! There we go. Sorry, man, technical difficulties all over the place, but no. Okay, that messed up our rhythm, but yeah, just to introduce the film this week is another one of those unintentional similarities that we've done again is that for the second week in a row, we're doing a film that the action centers around the murder of a teenage girl,
Oh,
but they're quite different. It's quite different from Mother, and maybe we can talk a little about that as we go on. But this is the 1997 film Insomnia, a Norwegian film, although it has the English title Insomnia. It was the first movie directed by director Eric's. I'm sure I'm going to say the name wrong because I'm not very good with these Nordic things, but Skulljerg, perhaps, is an approximation. I think we have at least one viewer that can help us out with that is familiar with these sorts of stuff, especially once we get into the Norwegian and Swedish stuff in the movie. But for myself, as somebody who once I was in university and was with friends that were like into film and stuff, that was really when I changed from like a casual movie fan into somebody that, wanted to seek out, different movies, whether it was foreign, independent, etc. And it was around then. And I remember that in 2002, the remake of this came out, the American remake.
Mm-hmm.
That was Christopher Nolan, wasn't it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Christopher Nolan just before he was started to really get big, did that, and I saw that movie in theaters and liked it quite a bit. And it might be the first case, I think, for me, of seeing an American remake and then tracing back the original version. I think that's the first time I've done that, and so this would have been around 2002, 2003, pretty shortly after seeing the remake that I hunted it down, and I was able to because of the video store that was in my neighborhood for so many years. And I really liked the film at the time. And then as I was saying to Jay before we started the show, that even though I really liked it and stuff, it's actually been that long, I think, since I had seen it again, and I hadn't even really thought about it too much. But when we were thinking about doing some foreign stuff, I was thinking about European, and I was like, Norwegian, that'd be, and that's sort of how that was sort of the thought process that sort of made me sort of think about this one again.
Yeah, I saw the remake first, which I'm sure most people, I'd be willing to bet a lot of people don't even realize that was a remake.
Right.
Because
I don't remember how I found that out, to tell you the truth. Now that I think about it, I don't remember if I read it somewhere or someone told me. I don't recall.
Yeah, I don't know how I knew either. I didn't know it first for sure. It was a few years later, and I think probably on Netflix, the disc version is probably how I watched it, along the way. But it's not really a whole lot of discussion about it online. I try to do a little research, and it's not a whole lot out there about the film. The trivia version on IMDb, the only thing in there is that it was remade, by Nolan.
That is surprising because, now that I've, rewatched it a couple times, and we'll get into it, just because I think it's such a well-made film and does so many little things well, that, that's a little surprising. You think it'd be one of those movies that at least have some sort of, I don't know, cult following. I know the director would do an American movie a few years later. He did Prozac Nation, I think, which was fairly well received. I haven't seen it myself, but it's a movie that people know and are aware of and stuff. And I thought maybe the fact that movie was kind of known might make people trace back to this one or something. And like we said, Christopher Nolan sort of has had the golden touch in a lot of ways. A lot of people hold him in very high regard, and a lot of people like the remake, and I mostly like the remake too. So you think again that maybe that would be a link too but it seems like, like you said, it doesn't seem like a lot of people have seen the film or are aware of it. And I get it, it's a Norwegian film. It's not, you don't really hear about many of those over here in the West, but still, just because of how well done it is, and how I think it's at least possibly influential in the genre. going forward. I mean, I struggle to really think of movies that came out since that took things from it, but I think there must have at least been some. We'll speculate on that a little later, I guess, as we get going here.
Yeah, yeah, I was noticing some similarities to other movies as well that came out before this. Let me make sure of that.
Well, the opening reminds me of the opening credits of Seven.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah,
Yeah, right?
and Seven was 96, right, or 95? Okay.
Yeah, so this isn't too much longer after Seven, and I really wonder if they were influenced by that for the opening. The opening
Had to have
scene,
been.
it seems like sort of an echo of that, even though it sets you up for something quite different from Seven. Maybe it's doing that on purpose, as we'll get into too. The film stars Stellan, Swedish actor Stellan Skarsgård, who I figure most people, North American audiences, are familiar with. He's done plenty of Western movies, plenty of not Western movies, plenty of North American movies, plenty of English language movies. I think a lot of people know him sort of as the actor you get when you can't get Liam Neeson.
No, I wouldn't say that.
I don't know. He reminds me of Liam Neeson in a lot of things, like when he's in Good Will Hunting and stuff. Like, I think for years I just thought it was Liam Neeson. I was like, oh no, it was stuff. I don't know. They remind me of each other. They're both kind of similar in build and stuff like that.
I think lately he's probably more famous for his sons. He has 3 sons that are all pretty famous Hollywood actors now.
Yeah, they've really started to get going, and I haven't seen them in too much, to tell you the truth, though.
That the youngest one was in that show that Eli Roth produced on Netflix. I don't remember the name of it right off, but it was a really good show. And the True Blood, the older.
Yeah, I knew somebody was in True Blood, and that was where I started to get confused because I didn't even know if he was related or not. It was just and yeah, and that was one of the names that would trip me up when I was trying to think of Stellan Skarsgård, and then but yeah, I knew that's a popular show. I never watched it, but that's had a big following.
Well, you'd see. I mean, he's done other stuff than just that. He was in the remake of Last House on the Left,
which I've seen. Yeah, I've seen that.
He was in. He was just in the recent Tarzan film.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's right.
Which was I don't know.
Yeah, I thought there were 2 of them. So there's 3 sons. Okay, I thought there were 2. So there's 3 acting sons. That's pretty impressive.
I believe that's right. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know.
Anyway, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Actually, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 sons. So.
Wow.
They're all actors.
Good acting genes, I guess, because I think very highly of Stellan Skarsgård, and I like him in a lot of the stuff he's in. He's mostly, as is with a lot of some of these foreign actors, at least foreign actors that are not necessarily from English-speaking countries. They'll play a lot of supporting roles in like the Hollywood movies, but then in some of the European movies, they get more starring roles. I was thinking of who was I thinking of just the other day? Oh, I watched a movie on Netflix called Cavalry about an Irish priest, and I'll have to look up the name of the actor in that because suddenly it's hitting me. But he's in a ton of stuff like that people would know, and he's almost always a supporting actor in those things. Brendan Gleeson. It stars Brendan Gleeson as a priest, and everybody's seen Brendan Gleeson. He's in like dozens of movies over here, tons of stuff, but he's not a leading role guy in most of them. But he gets the lead in this, and I thought that was kind of nice. It's a pretty good movie. It's just about a priest in a small community in Ireland, and one of the days at confession, the movie opens with somebody in the confessional booth talking about how when he was young, he was consistently sexually abused by a priest that he trusted. But he said like he knew that this priest was a good man, but he thought that would be better if he killed him because it would make a better statement to kill a good priest. So he says, get your affairs in order in a week. In a week, meet me and I'm going to kill you. So the movie's about the week leading up to that and how and it shows the relationships he has with his parishioners and stuff, and how as often, especially in smaller towns and stuff, how people just sort of use him as like a free psychiatrist, so they can just tell him all this stuff. And it's a pretty good movie. And it just sort of made me think about that, about some of like these European actors and stuff, how we'll often see them in so many supporting roles, but it's nice to see them in a leading role too. Yeah, Brendan Gleeson.
Yeah, I just looked him up. I know exactly who that is.
Yeah, he's all over the place. He's in so many movies, but rarely a leading guy. But it was nice to see him in that. He's in a Canadian movie that's quite good, called just sort of a cute little movie called The Grand Deception. It's about this fishing village in Newfoundland, and it's very true to life in that like it's times are tough there, and people are losing their jobs, and there's no work, and pretty much like half the town's like on welfare and stuff. And it's about how like they find out that there's a possibility of there going to be this plant built nearby, which would mean jobs, which would be great, but they need to meet certain requirements first. And one is like they don't even have a doctor. And then through some weird happenstance, this doctor from Toronto, played by I can't remember anybody's name anymore, but he was just in the second season of True Blood. Taylor Kish. It's played by Taylor Kish. Anyway, not True Blood. Yeah, you made me think True Blood. I'm sorry about that. No, True Detective.
Oh, True Detective. Okay.
He's in the second season. Anyway, his name Taylor Kish. Anyway, Taylor Kish winds up there, and they're trying their best to like do whatever they can to make him want to stay. And they're also trying to like run this whole thing of like convincing the inspector that they showed like that the town's a good place. Anyway, Brendan Gleeson is the main guy in that, and he makes a very convincing Newfie. It's a pretty cool movie. It's like people from my part of the world would appreciate. Like, I don't live in a tiny fishing village or anything like that, but that is kind of right down the road from me. Like that's what I grew up with. It's all around me. It's I lived in cities and stuff, but you don't have to go very far to find a place like that. I'm from Cape Breton, and Cape Breton and Newfoundland are very similar. They have a lot in common. And I thought Brendan Gleeson did a good job of the Newfoundland accent and stuff. And anyway, it's a good movie. But getting us way off track, but I was just thinking about some of these. Just watching the movie the other day just made me think of that, about how sometimes we see some of these actors and we're familiar with them, but if we're not like watching like some of the European movies, we don't get to see them in leading roles, which was the point I wanted to make about Stellan Skarsgård.
Yeah, exactly. And well, he is the lead in this. He is. See if I can. Jonas, he plays Jonas, the special agent who is brought in to investigate this murder. And because I guess they're having trouble figuring out what's going on, or I don't know exactly why he's brought in to begin with.
I guess it's because it's kind of similar to what they did in the remake, is the idea that like this is kind of so we're in northern Norway, and it's sort of like a smaller place, and it just seems like the police aren't as experienced with these sorts of crimes, I guess. So he's from a larger place in Sweden, maybe even Stockholm, I think they might say. And they seem to need somebody that has homicide experience, and they don't have much, I guess. So yeah, he and his partner come in. His name's Engström. Yeah, Jonas Engström, like you said.
And a young girl is found murdered in a trash bag in a trash heap. You know, essentially they find her there, and he's called in to investigate. And it's a really interesting case because he's cleaned her body thoroughly. And, you know, it makes you think that, you know, this is a really calculated killer, you know, who's probably done it before, like almost a serial killer, because he's gone through the trouble of washing her hair and other things like that. So,
yeah, the movie, like we said, with the echoes of Seven, it almost sets you up as like maybe it's going to be that sort of movie. And as the investigation goes on, you see that it's really not. And it's a good, you know, it's too bad in some ways that I saw the remake first. In that, just I think it's sort of a good sort of twist the way the investigation starts to go, because I don't think if you're watching for the first time you would necessarily expect it the way things turn. But yeah, so this one is very much from the police perspective, and mostly his about the investigation. And a lot of the stuff is so subtle, not really subtle, but subtle enough that like you could miss it the first time, and because they don't overstate anything. Like yeah, they're from Sweden and they're here, but they don't really play up that. Nobody really talks about it. You don't have them saying, "Oh, so you're not used to," nobody really says that stuff. It's just sort of either you grasp it or you don't. But
Yeah.
you just sort of figure it out as you go on. Okay, things are a little done differently here. Like one of the things they remark upon is true is that generally Norwegian cops aren't armed, but in Sweden they are, and that's something that they talk about and reflect on, and something that makes like well, no, I don't want to turn this into a thing about the remake because we'll start doing that when we do the remake. But a scene where they try to lure the suspect. They recover the backpack of the girl, and then they put out a fake one and pretend that they're still looking for it and put that out on the news saying, see if you can find this, so they can go to the place where it was found and stake out the suspect and see if he'll come for it, and he does. And when they're all there, I think people over here, the U.S., Canada, were sort of used to seeing cops in these operations all ready with their guns and stuff, and these guys aren't. It doesn't even occur to them, perhaps, that the suspect could be armed, and they're taken quite by surprise by it. But of course, our Swedish cop he still does have his gun once it comes into it. So that's just one of the things. Like they don't necessarily, nobody really points it out or talks about it, and you just sort of have to like piece it together as it goes. One of the differences.
Yeah, and in the pursuit, they do eventually find the guy, and they're pursuing him, and one of his colleagues gets shot in the leg, I believe, and that's when he pulls his gun out, and it's, I don't know, it's really questionable how that happened, but he ends up shooting his friend that he came over there with, and killing him. But it was just a figure in the fog. Like, why would you just shoot? But I don't know.
Yeah, I know. But at the same time, they knew that whoever was there was armed and had already shot. And after the other cop gets shot in the leg and he passes him, the suspect shoots at him. He does get fired upon, and he gets turned around. And the key thing I think the key thing, like you say, it's a little bit irresponsible, which what leads to it, but is that when he told his friend Vic, he said, once you hit the water, go left. So he wasn't expecting to see him on that side.
Okay, yeah.
And that's why.
Makes sense, yeah.
And then Vic's dying words were, you said to go to the right. And that's another little thing that's easy to miss, is that it's early on established that Vic is nearing retirement, and one of the things he's struggling with is he's having memory problems, is that his short-term memory is kind of shot.
Okay, yes.
There's a little bit where they talk about it. So that's sort of the explanation there, is that he had told Vic to go the other way, so he figured whoever he was shooting at couldn't have been him, or at least that. I mean, there's some people that even I'm sure have theories that it was subconsciously he knew who it was and shot anyway, although you don't really see any motive for that, so I don't really buy it. But yeah, that is a little bit of an explanation. Was that he had instructed him to go left, and he wound up going right because he screwed it up in his memory, and then that's what his last words are as he goes. But that's where the whole thing turns, and this is where the movie becomes different than I think what most audiences expect. Exactly. In that you go from like this usual trying to catch a killer thing, possible cat and mouse, to this complication of him shooting his partner, and then the other cops he's with just assume that since the suspect had already taken a shot at one of the cops, that he's the one who killed Vic, and it just seems to occur to him at that point to cover it up. And that's where we start to see, and really the movie to me is mostly a character study about what kind of person Engstrom is, and that's why I like the movie. And mostly, I mean, there's a lot of things like movies we'll get into, and what I really like about Stellan Skarsgård is we see that he's sort of a different kind of guy, and that he does all sorts of questionable things, and definitely possibly immoral and weird stuff like that, and we get to see what sort of person he is. And one of the things is, like, he very aggressively takes moves to cover this up, even though it's even later pointed out when he's talking to the killer. He says, you could have told the truth and probably, a suspension, slap on the wrist, and then you're back at work. And he doesn't really have any answer for him, for why he felt the need to go to such lengths to cover this up, as we'll get into. But
he goes through pretty extreme measures to cover it up. Yeah, he even it's the bullet is the first part is what he's trying to get, because they're going to match the bullet found in the first guy to the to Vic, right? Is that the theory?
Well, yeah, yeah, that's because he gets lucky in that the suspect leaves the gun. He
Yeah,
discards
yeah,
the gun, and that's why he's able to do that, right? Suddenly he has access to that, so he's able to use that gun, which he took from the scene and didn't tell anybody about, and then
yeah.
he fires it. He kills a dog, so he can get a gun and switches it out so that he can so that it will match the same bullet that they took out of the
Right.
cop's leg. Yeah, and
Yeah, that was the probably towards the top of his list of uh, terrible things that he did.
mhm. Because I mean, I think we're all pretty used to like seeing like anti-heroes or movies that have like damaged cops and stuff like this. But this one, I just find this one refreshing because they're not trying to make it seem like cool or anything. Because
Yeah,
usually it's like when you have an anti-hero, it's more just like, oh well, he's not much. It's usually one of those cops that were like their whole life is the job and they're kind of an asshole to talk to, but they're really
yeah,
deep down they're good and stuff. And I like that he's not some stereotype like that. He's not some that just like I said, it's become a stereotype almost in fiction to have that sort of cop, and I like he seems more real to me with his flaws and stuff because on the one hand you definitely see he definitely is the kind of cop where all he has is the job. He says, he's talking to the hotel lady. She says, "Do you have any family?" No, and it just seems like he wouldn't really care if he did. He's kind of a detached guy. He says about how he had a brother when he was a kid and it was kind of a source of embarrassment for him that when his brother died, like he didn't want to talk about it with anyone, which is not really what most people would say about
right.
it. Most people would just be like, "Yes, my brother died, and it was an awful thing." Instead, he's just like, "I was always, kind of embarrassed by it, and I would make up stories about where he was and stuff." And he's definitely not normal in that aspect. And yeah, like as I said, it's really where the movie gets interesting to me is sort of the character study of this cop who's not really good, not really bad. He's just sort of is what he is. But what it comes down to is that he is effective. Like
Hmm.
it seems like he has like this right mix of traits to make him effective. It's mentioned like not only were they called in from their comment, apparently they were sort of very highly recommended. And he seems to have a bit of a reputation for
Yeah,
being very efficient and very good at solving cases. So, and as the movie goes on, even though he has these again questionable things and things that would definitely be seen as flaws and not heroic traits, you do sort of see how they're kind of useful in a way too. It's like I wouldn't call him a sociopath, but he's has sociopathic at least tendencies. He has a certain amount of detachment and stuff, but in a way, it kind of makes him more focused.
hmm.
I think.
I found myself rooting for the killer, in a lot of ways, as the movie progressed, because, you find out that it was an accident. I mean, I know we'll get there, but you find out it was an accident. And, this guy is just, I mean, leaving a trail of, of destruction, trying to cover this thing up. And, um, yeah.
Well, I mean, it was an accident in that it was not a predetermined murder, but it was still pretty much murder. You don't
Well,
beat someone to death by accident.
I mean, he didn't mean to put the nail through her head.
Is
I
that
don't,
how she wound up dying?
yeah, he slammed her against a wall, and
Okay, yeah,
shows it at the very
yeah.
beginning during that
I mean, he was getting,
awkward
I mean, he was violent with her, and he did attack her. But yeah, there was an intent to kill there. But I,
during
I,
the
I
Nine
I
Inch
don't,
Nails
I don't find the
video.
killer sympathetic at all. I mean, I don't.
Well,
But it's another thing I like about it. There's another movie I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. I think it's a Danish movie because it also had a remake. Although in this case the remake was awful, and that's The Vanishing. And have you seen The
mhm,
Vanishing? Yeah,
yeah,
right. And
it's
the main
French.
thing, maybe it's Belgian. I thought it was
Oh, okay,
Danish.
okay, you may be right. It's French language though.
No, it's
Oh,
definitely not.
sorry,
I
sorry.
would remember French language. I think it's Danish. I have to think.
Right, because
If it was French language, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. But anyway, and the movie, the main thing anybody says about the movie and takes away is like, well, it's about the banality of evil. The idea that like in real life, evil usually isn't like in movies. It's not. it's not really that eccentric or interesting. There's not too many real evil masterminds are out there. There are certainly some serial killers out there. There's certainly some people with very strange pathologies, but for the most part, evil is just ordinary and everyday. And that movie sort of really drives that home. And I find this movie does the same thing, in that we get this guy, this killer, who's more or less very ordinary and banal, as we'll say. He's not. As we get to know him, we see some of his flaws and stuff, but it's more or less relatable. The only time he really gets into that sort of serial killer stuff, or he does sort of talk about how he felt like this moment of control with the girl, and that was what led to his sort of meticulous cleaning up of the body and stuff. He said like it made him feel like he was in control doing that. Like he could almost break it down into he said something like a mathematical formula or something like that. I can't remember his words exactly, but he says something like that. It seems like it was almost cathartic for him to, like, in the there you go, in the act of trying to clean her up and stuff after the murder and cover it up, was it was almost sort of cathartic for him to do those things, to go through it and clean her nails and wash her hair and all that. So you get that, but for most of the part, he's just a very ordinary guy. He's not somebody you would necessarily think of as dangerous or anything like that, or
almost the opposite of
sadistic.
dangerous. Almost weak.
Yeah, exactly.
But as Jonas, is that his name?
Yeah, I just think of it as Engstrom, but yeah.
Angstrom, okay. As Angstrom,
it is Jonas.
starts to do these things, you're kind of left with the question: is it the non-stop daylight, the 24 hours of daylight, or is it is he actually a horrible human being? Is he going into madness or?
Then the movie doesn't provide any clear answers.
Right.
Although he definitely has aspects of his personality that can't be accounted for just through the insomnia, which it's funny that we didn't get to that yet, which we will. But because he has some odd moments, like we said, he seems to be sort of detached as far as having a personal life goes. The woman shows him kittens, and he just, most people think kittens are cute, and he's just like, they disgust me, or something like that. He's not a very personable type person, so yeah. But the circumstances kind of make things worse. But I think it's true that even out of these circumstances, we're dealing with a guy that's again, definitely pretty questionable morally. I wouldn't call him a bad guy. I wouldn't call him a good guy. He's just sort of a flawed person, and probably not the type of person most people would get along with or really like to be around. And he's also the type of person that is fine with that, and is not the type of person that seeks out a lot of attachments or relationships and things, and probably dedicates himself to the job for whatever reason. And as I say, he's quite good at it. It's funny because he has these attachments, but he also proves that he has a certain amount of insight into human nature. He's pretty good at figuring some things out just by talking to people. Not just like with the killer, but when they're talking to the boyfriend or the ex-boyfriend of the girl, like he seems to be able to see through him quite well, what kind of person he really is. And he knows how to say things to catch him off guard and stuff like that. So he, like I said, I just find him interesting because he seems to have a certain amount of what is the word I'm looking for? Not inconsistencies, because that would be a flaw, but he just has a certain amount of things that of contradictions, almost, is kind of what I mean. Because on the one hand, he seems kind of like weird and awkward and unrelatable, and yet I think he does have a certain amount of insight into people and human behavior. Yeah.
Which is why he's probably so acclaimed. And, or one of the reasons why, at least.
Because there's one point, like towards the end, pretty towards the end, where he's talking to the cop that had been shot in the leg, and who, that was a brand new experience for him. I think, encountering any sort of violence on the job. He just says like about like how does it like not get to you and stuff like that. And he's walking away from him, and he says a very simple statement, but I think it's pretty much true. He just says, "Oh well, you get used to things, and you just have to know how to keep your personal life and your work separate," which is always an easy thing to say and
Yeah.
not so easy to do. But you get the sense for him, it is easy to do. No problem at all, probably, for him to do, because personal stuff is not really that personal to him. You know, he doesn't have the same amount that most people would have.
Yeah. Like he doesn't really have that much of a personal life to begin with.
Mm-hmm. And and it seems to take these cases to make him live because of the little things he does in them. It's like that's where his life comes from. Another thing that's easy to miss again is I was going to avoid doing too many comparisons, but one of the things that does come up about his character as played by Al Pacino in the other movie is they try to make it clear that even though he came recommended and was sent there for experience, he was still sort of on the downside of his career in some ways and in some trouble, because for him it would have been something like he'd been caught tampering with evidence. There was some suspect that he really wanted to nail, knew was guilty, but wanted to ensure that they get a conviction, so he like planted evidence or something, which, you know, it's just to show us that he's a flawed guy, but he's just really committed and dedicated. And that in this movie, it's a little different. We find out his past indiscretion is that he was caught having a sexual relationship with the main witness in some sort of investigation. And they don't elaborate on it. There's only one little scene where some people are talking about it behind his back, and you hear it. And you almost get the feeling like, because that's the scene towards the beginning where after he'd left the room when they were examining the body, after he leaves the room, he overhears some of the doctors talking about it.
Okay.
He hears them saying that, and it is easy to miss.
Yeah, I totally missed that.
And none of it's elaborated on, like you don't know the circumstances. But my point for bringing that up was like, it just seems to me like I bet you that is the only way he has relationships or sleeps with people is like just through the job. Like he doesn't seem like the type of guy that's meeting somebody in normal social circumstances. Like that's how he meets somebody to have sex with, somebody that's already completely wrapped up in his job, like part of the job where he shouldn't be doing that. But that's what I get out of it anyway. It's like, yeah, he does have relationships, and I guess he has, he's at least human enough to, have a sex drive and things like that. But it seems to be limited to within the sphere of his own work. Like he doesn't go outside of it, is what I get from it, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, you definitely can see that in this film as well, with the young witness and with the lady at the inn where he's staying,
Mm-hmm.
one that shows him the kittens. It's
Yeah.
I think that same scene, he gets really like.
He just gets really aggressive with her,
Wow.
and freaks her out, because at first she's amenable to it. They're good kissing and stuff, but then he doesn't react the way most people are. He gets sort of forceful and kind of aggressive with her, and she is like most people, rightly kind of freaked out by it, and she leaves. But again, he's not all the way there in that like he is kind of ashamed of it. He apologizes to her as she leaves. Like he kind of knows, like, okay, I am a little fucked up. Like he does seem to be conscious of it. So he's not just some stone cold sociopath that doesn't give a shit about anything. Like he seems to be aware of the things that make him different from other people and stuff like that. And he is, at least in some moments, a little bit ashamed of it.
One thing I did notice about that, he does actually get some sleep after that. I don't know if you noticed. He has a mask that he wears, and his coat is draped on top of him, and so he actually does get some sleep at that point. Like after he essentially tries to rape that woman.
Yeah,
one way or another, but I didn't know if there was any meaning behind that.
I don't know, because to tell you the truth, I was never really sure if they were indicating he was ever getting any sleep, or if they ever trying to say that he was just getting it little snatches here and there. That was another thing in the remake where they're a little more upfront about it. This is less.
We can get there. I'm looking forward to that.
In this one, it's just sort of like, well, at least we understand. But yeah, I mean, okay. So one of the major themes, and obviously the title of the movie is Insomnia. One of the things about being up that far north is, they call it the land of the midnight sun, is that at a certain time of year, the sun just doesn't go down at all, no matter whether it's day or night. and we get into, you know, the feel of the film and the look of the film, which I just love so much because I have a very long, detailed history of sleep problems, and I've had true bouts of insomnia. And everybody's experience is different, but at least in my experience, this movie actually does a really good job of capturing what it's like, and the way they use the imagery really reinforces it. And for instance, this movie, uh, a lot of the interiors are very claustrophobic, and also pretty much any building they go into, whether no matter what building it is, even if it's an apartment building or if it's the police office, whatever, they all have like long hall. They all have like seem like low ceilings, and they all have bright white pristine walls. Everywhere you go is white walls. And I can tell you one thing: anybody that's like, you don't need to be an insomniac to know this. Anybody who's been in a sleep deprived state, the two things you become really sensitive to are light and sound. And this movie sort of reinforces that, and you sort of get the feel like how he feels going in and out of all these areas with these bright white walls and bright white ceilings around, and the unrelenting sun on the outside. Like often they'll come into these buildings and there'll be like blinds drawn against the sun, but you'll still see the sun sort of like creeping in behind it. And I like, as I said, I don't think you necessarily have to be completely familiar with insomnia. You only have to know what it's like to be sleep deprived or anything to, you know, relate to a situation like that where maybe you're sleeping in the day or something and the sun is coming in and you just want, you know, you need to get away from it. And yeah, so you have this constant sun and you have these constant white walls. There's another little subtler thing that I noticed the second time I watched it too, is there's a couple scenes, they don't do it every time. So I don't even know if how purposeful it was or if it's just something I made up in my mind. But there's a couple scenes where they'll have a few characters standing around talking like the cops. There's a part where a few of the different cops are speaking. And instead of doing the normal cut where, you know, here's a close-up on this face and a cut, close-up of this face, instead of doing a cut, they'll actually just shift the camera super fast. For a second, everything just blurs and it goes over to them. And that is just like insomnia or being sleep deprived, in that when you move or do quick movements and stuff, everything just kind of blurs until it comes into focus again. So I always thought that was really well done, and I have to believe it was intentional just because of how well it lines up with it. And yet they don't use it in every scene. Maybe they didn't want to overuse it, is maybe my thinking.
Yeah, I did notice that technique, but I didn't actually, you know, relate it to being one of the symptoms of insomnia.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
No, I can tell you, it's yeah, it's just like a hypersensitivity type thing, and focus.
Almost reminds me of like hallucinogens or something.
Yeah, very much so. Because yeah, so that's what I like about the movie too. Is it's called Insomnia, and it points that out, and you know, all the normal hallmarks of insomnia, but with the added complication of a murder investigation, and then his own problem in trying to cover up his mistake, and how it affects, you know, his performance and his decision making and all that stuff, for sure.
Well, one thing I found really interesting is that, you know, it's daylight nonstop. You know, how easy would it have been to make it at, you know, nighttime, you know, just the opposite, to where, you know, it'll be much more of a, you know, you would think would fit a thriller a little more.
Yeah, more of a scary atmosphere.
Yeah, sure. But I really like that choice because it kind of goes against the grain of what you would expect, and you know, really makes it that much more, you know, of a you know, thrilling experience of a.
Yeah, they even say that right at the beginning, where when he first gets there and he's driving with his partner Vic. Apparently Vic has been up that far north before, because he just says, like, so what's it like in the winter? He's like, exact opposite, just dark all the time, you know. So that would be a good setting for another type of movie for sure. But
it reminds me of like 30 Days of Night, you know, the vampire film, which I always thought was such a great idea, you know, for a vampire story.
Really well, yeah. That's one of my favorite vampire stories for sure. Yeah. I really like the comic, and I think it's a pretty good adaptation too. I mean, it's not rocket science, not too hard to do. It's pretty good. Pretty good movie adaptation. All they really did to change the adaptation was they took out the vampires speaking their own language, which I thought was too bad. I liked how the vampires had their own language, and of course they had to Hollywood pretty it up by turning like this like middle-aged guy into Josh Hartnett and his wife into like some hot blonde.
Yeah.
That's movies, so
Yeah, unfortunately. I actually got into the graphic novel after the fact. I wasn't aware of it.
Mm.
But yeah, I really like that story.
Yeah, I've got that around here somewhere. Yeah, it's a cool thing. But yeah,
I mean,
that's the flip side of it. Up that north, you have periods of just daylight and then periods of darkness, and it's pretty crazy.
you take that, you would think you'd go crazy in the darkness, but you'd go just as crazy when it doesn't get dark ever.
Yeah. And speaking of like subverting stuff, again, what's kind of neat is you have this movie that's in northern Norway, obviously with some countryside and stuff like that. And like they do almost everything they can to like not like take advantage of great scenery and stuff. Like there's one scene, of course, she goes in like the gondola or something, and you see some mountains. The rest of the time, everything is very centered and tried to like keep the horizon out of it. It's just, which I think is good too. I think it's sort of a strength of the movie. Instead of showing us like mountains and fjords and things like that, Norway is known for the wide open spaces. The movie still has sort of a claustrophobic feel to it, like, and again, a banality. The city streets and all these things. It's just all blah kind of thing, and it becomes more blah as time goes on.
Right. Yeah. I'd like to see more of the countryside, but yeah, like you said, it does make sense to not show it. But
right.
But I mean, even what they do show is really beautiful.
Oh yeah, so really still really nice shots there,
it's
and
really, it's
on the
like
water.
It's I don't know what's going on with the camera, but it's like a dark. It's daylight, but it's a darker shot. I don't know what sort of filter they have on there, but really unique look to it.
Yeah.
Reminds me a lot of like you said, The Vanishing. Is that the name of it?
Yeah,
The
it's Vanishing. Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the look of that film.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but that's true too. And again, I think it's because they had that sort of common theme running through of like the ordinary, the banal, and stuff. You have movies about criminals and killers, and it's all very dramatic and interesting, exciting. And this is much more real world. It's like, well, no, most of the time a murderer is just a person that has flaws and made a mistake or something like that, which is really what it's come down to here. But what else was I going to say? Something. Oh yeah, just about his investigative techniques and the things that he would do that another cop wouldn't. Like we talked about his interactions with women. It's pretty interesting when he takes the friend in the car for the car ride, and part of it is just calculated because he knows what he can get for it. And then you think part of him is still human and thinks he can take advantage of a moment because he's in a car with a girl who's clearly jealous of her dead friend. She's jealous that her dead friend had this kind of exciting thing going on where an older man took an interest in her life and was, doing things. There was something exciting and dangerous about it to her. So it was easy for him to like present her with the same things, like, you want to come in the car with me, because he knew, this was sort of her chance to experience something like that. Again, an older man. This is a Swede, which is a little bit not much different, but I guess a little bit exotic for her and stuff. And she even tries to make it sound like something, because she says something like, "I've talked to Swedish men before," or something like that. She says, and you wonder if that's even true. But then, and it's like he's driving and he's just sort of thinking if there's a way, and she just sort of gives him one, and then he just goes with it. And you think, okay, in the back of his mind, there's a little human part of him where it's like, oh, here's a chance to feel up a teenage girl. But also, I think a lot of it is just calculated. It's like this is part of giving her the thrill that she wants and making her susceptible to what he wants to get out of her.
Well, yet another one of the questionable actions.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like that's a cop cannot do that.
No, I'm just like, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And she kind of pushes her leg over and touches his hand when he's shifting gears or whatever. And no.
Yeah. But no, that's not regulation. That's not.
But they don't teach that in the school.
No. but he's savvy enough, and he's, you know, has that morality thing, you know, enough to ignore that and go with it because he knows that it can be useful. Even though he just freaks her out at the end, which was also part of it too, to sort of bring which I think is done kind of over the top in the remake, as I recall, about showing the girl where her friend's body was dumped, sort of to crack her, because he already at this point knows that perhaps she's holding things back about the boyfriend because now she has a relationship with the boyfriend.
Is that right? That was the same girl that was sleeping with the boyfriend, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was.
Yeah, because that was the reason, because he knew, especially once he wanted to pin things on the boyfriend, once he'd sort of entered into that unspoken conspiracy with the killer that, you know, we're going to pin it on the boyfriend, he needed to have something against him. And he knew she was an obstacle because she would protect him.
Right.
So he wanted to do what he could to sort of discredit him and stuff. And that's why it comes in much later when he sees her again, and the female inspector had been talking to her. She said, well, she gives a pretty different account. She says, you know, that he never hit her or anything like that. And he just says, well, you know, you can't really believe her because she's in love with him, so she's protecting him, which is, you know, pretty masterful touch on his part, that he's managed to create this thing to cast doubt on her, because technically she is telling the truth, but he's also right. So he makes it seem like she has every reason to lie. He's pretty skilled at setting that up.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, plants the gun in the boyfriend's place, and they find it there. Mm-hmm. It's just insistent that he doesn't have a gun, which is I don't know. It's kind of funny to me. But and then what happens after that? Was that right? You know, before the end sequence there.
Yeah, that was coming towards the end. You know, there wasn't even any. The only real obstacle at this point was kind of the female cop, that where things didn't seem right to her, mm-hmm. and she, from the very beginning, did not really like his story. Mm-hmm. And I guess it just seemed too convenient now that the convenient guy, the boyfriend, because at this point the investigation did finally find the author. You know, he found it a little beforehand, but the investigation had caught up and said, you know, she has links to this author. Here's you know, signed copies of his books. And it links up at the fact, you know, that we found clothes that he must have bought for because she couldn't afford it and stuff. So, like, it's marching towards the inevitable that, you know, obviously this is really the culprit. She was involved with him, and he's trying to do what he can to make it seem like the boyfriend, because he doesn't want to, I guess, go down with the killer. Again, it's not as spoken out. You know, they pretty much talk about it right out in the open in the remake, where it's like, oh, we're in this together now, blah blah blah. This, they don't really do that. It's pretty much unspoken, but it's kind of like they kind of recognize something in each other. Mm-hmm. Like, this killer sort of gets that this is, even though and that's where it starts, because he says, you know, you didn't have to cover up shooting your friend. Mm-hmm. Why? And he just sort of gets the sense that, okay, this is not an ordinary cop. This is a cop that maybe I have some things in common with and I can work with. Mm-hmm. You know, he obviously gets that sense.
Well, he's got something on him. I mean, it's almost like he could, you know, if he gets mm-hmm. busted, he can turn him in for shooting
mm-hmm.
his shooting Vic.
Yeah, and they've got this sort of like Cold War thing going on mm-hmm. now, where they could, you know, each could take the other down, and that's why things escalate as they do, even though there's not really any way out of it once the whole thing with the boyfriend falls apart. Like, you know, the evidence is still going to lead to him, no matter what. So it would be in his interest to kill this guy. And that's one of the parts of the movie where I don't know, anybody can guess. I don't even have a theory. Is when he went to talk to him, do you think he wanted to kill him that last time? Because he doesn't have his gun out or anything, and the other guy does come with a gun because he thinks that, okay, he's going to kill me. And he just says, I just want to talk. And I don't know if that's true or not, because talking wouldn't get anywhere at this point. Right. At this point, there's nothing left to talk about.
Exactly.
But at the same time, if he was planning on killing this guy, he just sort of came into the situation, you know, vulnerable, especially in his state. And that's what we see is, like, you know, he still has some of his cop instincts and his moves, and he manages to kick the gun out of the guy's hand. But then he just gets taken down, and the guy kicks him for a while just because, you know, he's been up for who knows how many days, and he's in a terrible physical and mental state. So he's really physically not any match for him at that point. And
Well, you know, back to what you said about him having really good instincts at reading people, maybe he knew that he wouldn't shoot him first, and he could use that in his favor.
Because that's the other thing, right? He even after he gets taken down, the guy, even though he doesn't have a gun anymore, he could, you know, still kill him somehow. And instead, he decides just to flee. And maybe at this point, he's thinking, you know, I'll just go to the cops and tell them the truth. And then, of course, another thing where we subvert expectations, where I think in some of these thrillers, we're expecting more of an exciting showdown. And in this, you know, he gets the hero or the cop or whatever gets knocked down. The guy leaves him. And then you think, okay, here comes the chase. And instead of a chase, the guy gets distracted, falls, hits his head, and then just simply drowns.
Well, he tells him to stop.
Right. It's very anticlimactic, right?
It's very anticlimactic. Yeah,
very anticlimactic.
But
which totally fits the movie, though. Yeah, it fits the movie because, again, it's more about banality and real life and stuff. And it's you know, it's not the hero cop chasing the calculating serial killer. It's not that. It's, you know, too much more just sort of real, almost equally flawed individuals in certain aspects. And and then their confrontation just sort of turns into something quite anticlimactic and ordinary.
I think that's why it's so interesting, is because it's not that, you know, the cat and mouse chase we're so used to. It's quite different on both ends. The killer is different and the cop is different.
Right. And the cop's struggle is really with himself, more so than anything like that. It's a struggle with himself. It's a struggle to solve the case, cover up this thing he's done, and just sort of keep sane amidst all this, with all this going on, and, you know, and not being able to sleep. And again, we see he's not all the way one way or the other. He's not just some cold, calculating guy. He feels remorse about things. He feels guilt. He's haunted by his friend. You know, probably the most human moment he has is towards the end, where he has his last like little dream sequence or hallucination of his friend, and it's a story that his friend had told him about when he and his wife went to a hotel and they mixed up the names so that somebody else with the same name showed up in the room or something like that. You know, some stupid little story. Yeah. And he's just sort of remembering that story and laughing. That's kind of like the most human moment he has, where it's like, oh, he did care about his friend, and he did like him. He liked listening to him talk and stuff like that. And it's sort of the most human we see him, because most of the time he is sort of cold and detached and downright awkward with people, and as we've seen with his interactions. So you do see that he does have a conscience, and he's not just some sociopath, you know, putting on a mask to society. It's more in between, which I like. And I think Stellan Skarsgård is sort of uniquely suited to it. I mean, again, whenever we talk about a movie, an actor being good in a role, you know, we always be loath to say, well, we're not going to say no one else could do it. That's kind of a ridiculous statement.
Well, no, Al Pacino can do it.
But I just really like it. And jumping ahead, like, I really love the ending, and it's one of the things we'll talk about when we talk about the other. But I like this ending way better than the ending in the other one, and I just like how it ends with him driving in the tunnel, and he has that sort of blank expression on his face as it goes. And I understand a blank expression does not sound very difficult to pull off for an actor, but I don't know how many actors could have done it as well as he did it. I really, really enjoy the ending, and it's the only time music shows up. Another thing, the movie does have a soundtrack, but it's extremely sparse. It's just little flourishes here and there, which I think also helps. It fits the whole feel of the movie very well, to mostly not have music. Music would almost be an intrusion, you know, to have some of the normal soundtrack stuff we're used to coming into this movie. I think it would intrude on it. I think they were right by holding it back and having very little.
Sorry, I was trying to find the name of the female cop. Is it Hilde?
Let's see. I have it somewhere too. Yeah, Hagen. Well, her last name's Hagen. I just go by their last name.
Yeah, Hagen. Yeah. That'll work. Well, yeah, she. I don't know if we mentioned this. She actually, you know, figures out exactly what happened, and that, you know, he did shoot Vic
and cover it up.
Yeah, she found the casing of the gun that he uses.
Yeah, that's the second last scene before the driving. Is she confronts him. You know, she says about how the bullet was actually, from a gun from this model. And he's just like, oh, that's a Swedish model. She's like, yeah. He's like, the Swedish police use that model. And then she just looks right at him. He just says, say what you have to say.
Yeah.
And she takes out the casing and puts it down, letting
And
him
then
know
leaves,
that
and then
she
she
knows
just
everything.
leaves.
Then
Yeah.
she leaves.
It's like, I know what you did, but oh well.
But what's the point?
Yeah.
The case is solved. You're going to go back to Sweden. It's done. Like, you understand it. I don't think, I mean, I guess some people might be frustrated with that. They might think, well, why doesn't she do anything more? To me, again, I think it fits. It's just sort of like the events have run their course. She kind of sees what kind of person he is. But again, he's not going to be her problem anymore. He's going to go back to Sweden,
Well,
etc.
it's like you said, the American remake probably has to flesh that out and give reason, and they have to have a discussion, and it can't just be. It has to be explained because like the same questions we're having, everyone is going to have, and they need to be answered.
Mm-hmm.
Not in my
Yeah,
opinion, but
I know. And instead of that's what's good about being presented with characters like this is because
Mhm.
the audience, we get to sort of have our own theories and imaginings and ideas on how these characters would react or what they think about this or that or the other thing.
I mean, it's
And
like
that's what I
everything
like
has
about
to
it.
be, everything has to be resolved and put in a nice tiny little package for you to absorb before the end of the film, and then that's it. Which, I mean, I don't think that's always necessarily the case. I think leaving some stuff open ended really,
Yeah,
makes you think, like you said.
for sure. Another thing that I was confused about years ago when I saw the movie that I have a little bit of an understanding of now, although anybody who knows more about this can certainly correct me or fill in the gaps. And that was, so there's Swedish cops coming to Norway, and there's a couple times where people talk about communication problem. Okay, so Swedish and Norwegian are extremely similar languages to the point that like pretty much 90% of people from Norway understand the Swedish people. And I hear it's a little harder going back the other way. But for the most part, they pretty much understand each other. The differences in their languages are extremely little and subtle, and there's not much going on. They make the point in this movie, and I found out too that, yeah, since you're in the northern part of Norway, the understanding is a little less, not like people that are in the southern part, they're more familiar with Swedish. And the other thing is something that I did know is that Norway and Sweden, this is like not a perfect example, but it's kind of like a Canada-US thing. And that in Canada, we're a smaller country and we're inundated with American culture and stuff like that, but it doesn't really go that much back the other way. It's the same, kind of similar. It's not exactly the same. It's, there's not a huge difference like there is between Canada and the US with populations and stuff, but Sweden is the bigger country. Sweden is the country that it has the TV stations and stuff that get up into Norway, and it's like that. Like, so Norwegians are very familiar with Swedish stuff and Swedish influence in media and stuff, and it's less so going back the other way. So there's a couple times like where during the interrogation, the boyfriend says, I don't understand this guy, and if you don't know if you don't know that stuff, you might just believe him. But if you do know this, you think, actually, he's probably just saying it for effect. He's kind of just saying it to be annoying. He's kind of just saying it because he resents being in this situation, and he thinks he can just, like, at least take a dig at the guy for being Swedish. So that's some little subtlety thing that, you might not understand if you watch the movie and you don't know as much about the languages and stuff. And she says about how nobody in the class understood him, but she did. And you think, well, no, they probably did understand, but again, she's trying to single herself out, make herself feel special. Like when she was saying about how she talked to Swedish men before, she's saying, I'm different, I'm more mature, I understood you. But to me, with that knowledge, it's more like that's kind of bullshit. Like most of the students
Yeah.
probably understood fine.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, it would kind of be like, speaking Spanish in Cuba or speaking Spanish in Mexico. I'm just guessing.
Yeah,
Because I'm looking at a map here, man. Like
it's more of a dialect thing.
these aren't very big countries we're talking about here.
No.
And Norway and Sweden are, right next to each other, next to Finland, and Denmark is right below Norway, and every one of those countries has a different language.
Yeah. As far
Finnish,
as
Swedish, Norwegian, Danish.
Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish are all very close. Swedish and Norwegian, especially. Danish is at least different. Like you have to learn some things, but they're all a part of the same thing.
Yeah.
Finland is the wild card. Finland's language is different completely. So if it was Swedes and Finland, that'd be different. Like there would be an actual language issue there.
That's so crazy that they're that close and their language would be that different.
Yeah, it's because of its weird history, which I guess I don't know as much about, but that's why it's
closer to Russian, perhaps.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Okay.
But a weird history when it comes to invading forces, things like that. But
I'd love to go over there and visit some of those places.
Because it's funny, like I know a bit about the countries because of hockey and stuff, but like it seems strange that you would think that like Norway would just be as big as the other ones when it comes to hockey, but people that know hockey, no, Norway's not a hockey power. Like Sweden and Finland, absolutely. The NHL's full of Swedes, full of Finns. You go to like an international tournament, Sweden and Finland are usually threats to, at least get a medal. Whereas Norway, like, doesn't really have anybody or anything, and it seems weird. But what I did know, taking Norway out of the equation, even those Norwegian movies, what I was talking about between Sweden and Norway is kind of the same thing with Sweden and Finland, where Sweden is sort of the bigger country, the bigger brother country, and Finland is the smaller one, and they have kind of a weird little rivalry going on. Sometimes kind of friendly, sometimes kind of not. That's sort of like a Canada-US thing again, but not exactly, But so I understood it's kind of the same thing with Sweden, Norway. Of the three countries, Sweden is the bigger one, the more known one, the more influential one. But
that's interesting.
But yeah, it's an interesting little wrinkle to the movie. It's not really that far needed, but it's easy. Like we said, like if you're from here, Canada, US, or something like that, it's hard to necessarily grasp how different it is for these Swedes to be in Norway because we're thinking, oh, pretty similar countries and stuff. Like, how different is it? And it's an interesting parallel in the remake where you have cops from LA in Alaska. It's still the U.S., but obviously California and Alaska are worlds apart, and they play that up a lot in the movie. Whereas this one, they don't play it up as much, and it's also because, well, how different is it? But at the same time, yeah, you live in Sweden, you're used to the winter and cold, but these guys are not from northern Sweden or anything like that, so being above the Arctic Circle is still different for them. But, they don't hit us over the head with it or anything like that. It's just, okay, this is further north, this time of the year this happens, etc. But yeah, the language thing was something that probably I didn't fully understand years ago when I first watched it, but now I know a little bit more about languages and had done some reading, and I just think it makes some of those interactions a little more interesting when you understand the relationships there. So yeah, to me, when certain characters were talking about not understanding, to me, I think it was intended that those characters pretty much did understand. They were more or less just saying it for their own reasons.
It doesn't ever actually say where they are, does it? The exact city?
No, I don't think so. Or Tromsø, maybe. If I look it up, I don't remember them saying that, but I guess
that was one of the filming locations.
Yeah, so I guess technically it's Tromsø, although they don't make any point of saying where it is or pointing out any landmarks or anything like that. Although our audience, we would recognize them anyway. But I guess if you were like from around there, they didn't go out of their way to include stuff like that. There might have been something in the background that said it that I didn't notice.
Well, yeah, and plus I can't read that language.
Right. So yeah, so like the main thing they're just trying to impress is this is a northern city, and it's a city where they're not used to things like murder. Is I guess the main thing you really need to take away from it. And like when they're pointing out the difference between like the Swedish cops and the Norwegians, and the police chief just says we probably should do what you do and have our cops be armed. After that screw up, although the screw up didn't have to do with being armed, it had to do with not mapping out the area properly.
Friendly fire.
Yeah. But I mean, the whole problem is they get to the area, they stake it out, but there's a flaw in the plans they have. They didn't know about the door leading to the tunnel. you know, and
Right.
that's why he's mad. He's mad because he thinks, you know, if I'd known, I would have put somebody down there. We would have caught this guy, and nobody would have gotten shot. And he's right. But instead, the guy sort of deflects and talks about guns.
Yeah. Like like you said, coming from guns. Oh man, guns are everywhere. I'd like to visit a place who doesn't know about murder. That'd be great.
Yeah, I'd like to live somewhere where the cops don't have guns.
The cops don't need guns.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, well, obviously is the thing, but I mean, not to go on a thing about guns, but I don't really like cops, and some of it is has nothing. Some of it hasn't, you know, and that's an unfair statement to say because you know cops are individuals, you know, and I don't mean all cops are bad, but I don't feel. I feel nervous around them. One of the reasons I feel nervous around them is because I know they have guns, which I know again is one of those more irrational fears. It's just a gun on the holster there. The cop's not going to take it out and wave it around.
Yeah.
You know that, right? But if I'm out and I see a cop, often my eyes will go to the gun, and it does make me
Yeah.
a little nervous and stuff.
Yeah. I was thinking about that earlier today, actually. And necessary evil was the words that came to mind, which probably not the best way to describe cops, but
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. You know.
I mean, they serve their purpose. You know, I mean, it'd be chaos without them. So
Mm-hmm. You know, I read that some people have compared the movie to the novel Crime and Punishment, but I can't talk too much about it because I can't. That I have that book around here somewhere, but I haven't read that in so many years because that is not what you call light reading. If you want light reading, you don't read Dostoevsky. But from what I remember, I guess the main comparisons I can make is it has to do with maybe feelings of like guilt and stuff like that.
sure.
In that the main character and also kind of that duality of being able to like do immoral things and stuff and having this side and that side because from what I remember, like the main character in that, he commits a couple murders and then throughout it he's sort of haunted by it. But it's weird because on the one hand that character can seem just what you expect, kind of cold and emotionless, and you understand why he could kill people, but he's also in the book has moments of genuine compassion and stuff too, and he also has moments of genuine guilt, and a lot of it is he feels a lot of guilt over what he did, and that does kind of relate a bit to Engstrom's character, like I said, because throughout the movie we see that he has kind of a cold detachment to a certain degree, but he's not all the way there. He does seem to be capable of empathy and compassion. He's definitely haunted by what he did to his partner. You get the feeling that he did like his partner, like So I guess that's one of the things. There's obviously more to be said on it, but I just don't remember the book too well anymore to really get into it, and that's okay. The show would be like 3 hours long if we did, because honestly, if you want to talk about a book with like complex themes and stuff, like that's right at the top of the list is something like Crime and Punishment, man.
Sure.
Those Russians.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't really strike me that he was like suffering with, he was being tortured by, the death of Vic. I mean, it just didn't feel that way to me. It just like it, I mean, when it happened, he didn't really have much of a reaction at all. I don't know.
No, and immediately he starts covering it up.
Right.
Like I said, it's peeled back a little later is when he starts sort of seeing him in his room and stuff,
Yeah.
and
I mean, that's like the only, like you said, the only human qualities he really shows.
mm-hmm. I mean, if you were of the opinion, of the whole, that he's just like a really bad and kind of irredeemable guy, you could even make the argument that those moments that seem kind of like empathy or compassion or guilt were only there because of the insomnia. That maybe without it he wouldn't have them. Like that's valid. If somebody believes that like normally this guy would shrug off these things, but the fact that he's dealing with this insomnia is sort of like making him more emotionally vulnerable than he'd normally be.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably a pretty good theory if somebody had that idea. To me, like I said, I mean, he's definitely an unsympathetic character, but I don't find him unlikable, and I don't find myself, wanting bad things to happen. Like, I don't feel at the end of the movie like I really wish like he'd gotten turned in or something. I don't feel that way. I just sort of, and I guess that's what I mean. Like, often so many movies struggle. It's usually you have a hero who's really good and cool, and obviously it's easy to like them. And then you have the anti-hero that is just, they might be kind of a jerk, or they're doing things for selfish reasons or whatever, but they're cool and they're badass and whatever. So it's easy to root for them too. And it's really hard to really straddle the line what they're doing with somebody like Angstrom, who is definitely an anti-hero, but he doesn't have any of those cool anti-hero traits, really. So he just seems like the type of guy that, like, I guess a lot of audiences would just be like, well, I don't like him, but I did like him. Like, I didn't like him a lot or anything, but I just sort of liked how human he was in a way. And I had to appreciate the fact that even though he had things that, would make him certainly not a pleasant person, and also things that would make him in trouble as a cop, but you couldn't argue that they also made him effective as a cop. And I just kind of appreciated that.
Sure.
Like I said, he seemed to have like an interesting insight into the way people think and how they'll react and stuff like that. And he has sort of just a strong focus.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting how I found myself rooting for the killer over him. Generally that's not the case. So it kind of speaks to his character. A guy who's gonna cover up a crime scene and essentially molest children. Is not that great of a guy. So,
Right.
And that's on the short list of things that he shoots the dog, which that kind of pissed me off too.
Oh yeah, I mean
just for
the I hate that.
I guess it was a fit to the solution at the time. Because wasn't the dog barking and like annoying him too? So,
I guess. I mean, what I just took away from it was like when he first went out there and threw up, it was how he found out the dog was there. So I mean, it was very awful and calculating that when he came out, he like specifically whistled and called to the dog and then gave it some food to eat to distract it while he shot it. Pretty awful. And then he just clinically like takes the bullet out and stuff. So yeah, in a moment like that, it's pretty easy to like not want to root for this guy at all. And in any movie, like, animal cruelty is really the thing that drives me nuts more than anything else, to tell you the truth. And yet I still can't really hate this character. I don't know why. Like I said, he's not likable. I just find him sort of in the middle, where I just find he's an interesting mix of like the good things and the bad things. Well, I guess is what it is.
I wanted to say I'm not the guy that it'll be a film where 200 humans die and then they'll kill a dog and everyone feels really sorry for the dog. That's not me generally.
That's usually me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like it's I don't know, it's kind of shitty to distinguish one from the other, but I don't know. That seems to be what everybody kind of plays on in movies. Like John Wick. The shitty part of it was when they killed the dog, right? That's what everybody says. Yeah. Nobody cares that all these other people were murdered.
No, well, I don't care. Like, I've saw people like say like, oh, that's a bit of an overreaction. I'd be like, no, I would do the exact same goddamn fucking thing. I would kill everyone I could if they killed my dog. Everyone I fucking could if they were in any way connected to it. Absolutely.
Have you seen John Wick 2?
No, I was hoping maybe to go this week. Maybe. I know Ryan liked John Wick 1. Was trying to see if he'd want to go. I don't know. Maybe if I just go alone, whatever. But people are saying it's really good.
Yeah, it's getting great reviews.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to go see it.
So maybe the next couple days. Couldn't go the other day. A big storm hit here. Everything was pretty much shut down. Digging out now, but maybe even tomorrow, depending on how things go. But yeah, I'm totally interested in John Wick, because John Wick was a pretty fun movie. I didn't like it the way a lot of people did, but I thought it was good. But this one, a lot of people seem to think it's better. So sure, why not?
Well, I love the action scenes. The fight choreography was great in there.
Yep, for sure.
It's rare
definitely one of like the only movies with like good fight choreography in the last like 15 years or so. I mean, we talked about before, but everything now is just quick cut, quick cut, quick cut. Just trying to convince you saw a fight when all you really did was see some movements and stuff with like actors, or, that can't really do anything, and just making it look like they can instead of taking people that are actually talented at this and filming them doing it. It's just So I appreciate that, and a lot of people say there's some really good fight choreography and stuff, and some really good gunplay and stuff too in John Wick 2. So I definitely hope to check it out soon.
Well, it's a lot of I know you're a big John Woo fan. It's it reminds me a lot of that type stuff, Asian.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Cinema, which always like that stuff, and it's rare to see it done well these days. So, but I forgot what I was going to say. But Keanu Reeves is no like slouch. I mean, dude, like is a martial artist, and he's
I mean, I make fun of him as an actor and stuff, but I just mean he's a good action guy for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I get the the bad acting stuff, but I still like the guy.
No, I like the guy, and I like I said, I like him mostly for his action roles. I think he's good at it, and he's a pretty good martial artist for not a professional artist, but I mean he's gotten into it. He's taken it seriously.
Well, I mean, for the movies, it's not like he's Ben Affleck or some shit over here. Throwing haymakers, and they're making it look like he knows.
Yeah, I mean, I even like that movie he did. What was that sort of martial artist movie he did?
47 Ronin.
No, it was after that. It was lesser known. It had sort of a guy that like he was almost sort of like a protege of him because he wanted to like market him as an action star. His name was like Tiger Chen or something like that. And Keanu Reeves is in it. He's like the bad guy that Tiger Chen fights at the end. A man of Tai Chi. That's what it is.
Oh,
yeah. I thought that was a cool movie. I mean, nothing special, but I mean, it was a good movie with some good fight scenes and stuff.
Yeah. Anyway,
some fighting in that.
Not a jerking off Keanu Reeves here, but well, next week we're going to be doing the remake of Insomnia. So, Christopher Nolan.
Yep.
So that will be interesting. Watching this again, it really it's pretty much a direct remake, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
obviously there's things that they changed that we'll talk about, but I mean, and it's a different setting and stuff, but the plot still follows the same basic beats with, some differences here and there, which
it's in English, and it's in Alaska.
It's in Alaska. They changed the setting to Alaska. And
I figured one of Pacino's last good movies.
I think so.
Unfortunately.
I think so. 2002. But yeah, when I thought of doing this, I wasn't sure if we should do them together or if we should even do them later on or stuff like that. But I just mean talking about this makes me want to talk about the other one. So for sure.
Yeah, God. Have you seen Righteous Kill by any chance?
Which one is that?
It's got De Niro in it also.
And someone's killing cops.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it has like 50 Cent or somebody. It's really, or some rapper.
Not a good movie.
It's really boring. Yeah, I saw it. I thought it was really boring. It was a few years ago when it was kind of newish. It was a movie like 2009 or something. I don't know, but
50 Cent. You're right.
Yeah, but I made myself watch that once, and it was just dull. I didn't think there was anything technically really that bad about it. There just was nothing to really say was positive either. It was just, it's just like, oh, here's these two together again. You can get excited about that, but no, not really.
You know what? I may have this confused with 88 Minutes. I think 88 Minutes is the one you're talking about with the serial killer.
I don't know. I thought 88 Minutes had something to do with like a robbery.
Whatever. Anyway.
I don't know. I didn't see 88 Minutes.
The same type movie. Ugh. Donnie Wahlberg, John Leguizamo.
Yeah. Now, there were quite a few like it feels like the 2000s, sort of the 2000s were kind of a bad decade for a lot of crime movies. You got The Departed in there, which was good, but
yeah.
There were a lot like that seemed pretty good, like on the surface. Like, what was the movie? Like We Own the Night. Like I remember being excited for that movie. And then I
Yeah.
watched it and I was like, what? I thought it was so crappy because it had like actors in it that I liked and stuff. I was like, oh, this looks pretty good. And
Is that Joaquin Phoenix?
yeah, it's like what
Um,
I think
Ed Harris?
Edward Norton's in there,
Oh
who I
yeah.
really like, and like it just was so blah. Like I was so disappointed in it. One of the movies from that era that I did like that I don't think really got any attention was Brooklyn's Finest. I did like that. That had shit.
Oh yeah. Was like Don Cheadle in that or something?
Maybe. But this is not who I'm thinking of though. I'm thinking of the older guy. Oh shit. The guy, the guy.
Richard Gere?
Yeah, Richard Gere. Thank you, Richard. Because it's sort of he's one of the cops. There's like three different cops. It centers on three cops that aren't related to each other and how their stories sort of intersect. Like it's not great or anything, but I just found like the 2000s had all sorts of crime dramas and movies about cops and stuff like that that like were kind of really shitty.
Yeah.
And I thought that one was actually better than a lot of them. I haven't seen it in a while.
What was the other one that Edward Norton was in?
25th Hour.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's like Spike Lee. I hated that too. Apparently, that was pretty well received. Like, I think that even has like good scores and stuff, like on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes and stuff. But I could not stand it.
I gave it a 5. So
Yeah.
whenever I watched it, however many years ago.
And again, it was a movie. Edward Norton is one of my favorite actors, so I'm psyched to see a movie Edward Norton is in, and like that movie totally let me down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so did that one with Joaquin Phoenix, which just was not what I was expecting. It was like, I don't know, it was like a club owner and his brother, and then the brother becomes a cop, and I don't know, it was just it was very blah.
I mean, like, try to name a good one during that period of time.
That's what I mean. Like, I thought The Departed was good, but what else was there? Like,
I'm sure there's something, but
I mean, I can think of some, but they're not like Hollywood movies. There were some good, Chinese and Korean movies in that genre, but I'm having trouble, like I said, thinking of American ones. One from a couple of years ago that's a much different crime drama that I was really excited to see, and at first I was disappointed. I'd like it. It just wasn't the movie I was expecting. And this isn't 2000s. This is only about 2 or 3 years ago, and that was A Most Violent Year. Most Violent Year is actually quite a good movie. It's just not at all the movie I thought it was going to be. Just because of like what it's about and stuff. It has one of my favorite actresses in it, Jessica Chastain.
Yeah.
I think it's just really talented and cool. I think I've talked about it before, and it's sort of the same thing where, I don't mean to be biased or sexist, but it's true when it comes to a lot of actresses. When I talk about actresses I like, it has less to do with their acting ability and more like if I find them pleasant or attractive or something like that. Like I know Natalie Portman's a pretty good actress, but I like her mostly just because I'm attracted to her and think that I just always find her interesting and cool on the screen. But that doesn't necessarily mean that she's giving great performances all the time. I think Jessica Chastain just really gives good performances.
Well, generally, the women that I think are really good actresses generally are not
they're not
attractive.
They're not the bombshells or whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, you get the the rare case where I think Natalie Portman's a good exception to that rule. Jessica Chastain as well.
She's really, yeah. Yeah, Jessica Chastain certainly pretty.
It's you've got that double-edged sword of needing to be attractive to be cast in that role, or else you're the mom, or you want to be on your looks or on your acting merit. So I don't know. Yeah, it sucks that it's that way, but it's that way for me too. Yeah, I haven't seen that film. I'm gonna check that out. I've definitely heard of it, but
The Most Violent Year. Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's just not what I was thinking because like it's set in like 1980 or 81, and that's why I was because like it was like statistically like the most violent year like in New York or something like that. And I thought it was going to be more about street crime and stuff. It's not. It's about a guy who I guess he's got some sort of business like with trucks and stuff like that, and he'd had ties to organized crime. And it was basically about how he didn't want to do that anymore. He was trying everything he could to just be a legitimate guy and not, be part of that anymore. And what was happening was, just because of the crime in New York, his trucks were getting like robbed and stuff. So it's just about him dealing with that problem and not wanting to like do what I guess he would have done in the old days, and just get some of his criminal buddies to like take care of business and stuff. And Jessica Chastain's his wife, and it is quite good. It's a good movie and it's interesting. It's just not what I was expecting when I watched it. I thought it was going to do more with like street level crime or gangs or something like that. It's not that.
It's
But
more of a race relations type thing.
No, not at all.
Oh, okay. That's what I gathered from the description.
Well, I mean, I guess there's some of that in there, but no, it doesn't. That's not really a main thing. I mean, yeah, it's not really a main thing. No, it's just more about how this guy is struggling to like, not turn to violence is kind of what it is, right? It's like, it's a very violent world, and he's, was part of it. And it's sort of like how he doesn't want to be that person anymore, and that kind of stuff. And it's pretty good. But yeah, I was disappointed when I first saw it because I wanted something, a little different than that. But it is good for sure. I would recommend it. Absolutely. I think you would find it interesting.
Sure. Yeah, it seems like really competent people involved. So definitely check that out. It's, Oscar Isaac, he's like blown up since The Force Awakens. He's in like every movie now.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think of that, but yeah. That's right. This would have been a little before that, but I think it's 2014 maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it. But switching gears a little bit, did you catch Legion?
Oh, the show.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get that channel. I guess there's ways I could watch it though.
FX?
Yeah.
It's just the regular FX.
Yeah, as far as I know, I don't get that channel. But I could probably still look into it. I mean, it's interesting because it's another one of those characters. Because like the main reason I liked the Netflix Jessica Jones show, because you've heard me rant and rave before about how much I hate Jessica Jones and I hate her guts, was I thought that they did a really good job with the villain Purple Man, because I've always felt Purple Man in the comics has never really been used to his full potential, and I felt like the show actually does a really good job of that. And so that's kind of how I feel about Legion. I always thought Legion is a really interesting, cool character that they've never really known what to do with in the comics. So I do like the idea of them making a show about him. Although, I mean, how much do they have to downplay the X-Men stuff? That's the only thing that might bother me. Like, to me, if the X-Men aren't like really important and part of it, then I don't really get the point. And I mean, to me, it's just not going to really address that. I don't know. Like, I don't need the X-Men like showing up every 5 seconds. But I mean, I don't know. I need something that tells me that they're there and that they're in the world. Because he's Professor Xavier's son. That's who Legion is.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yes. I mean,
wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that's not like a spoiler. Yeah, I hope that's not like a spoiler for the show or anything like that. But yes, he's when Charles Xavier was in Israel, basically 20 years before now. We have a floating timeline. 20 years before the X-Men were formed. He was in Israel, and that's where he met Magneto, and that's where they became friends. Mm-hmm. And when he was there, he had a relationship. They were working at a hospital, and he had a relationship with a nurse there, and she had a son that he didn't know about, would find years later, and that's him, David, and that's who Legion is, who's like a really powerful mutant, but with like crazy psychological issues and like multiple personalities and stuff. But yeah, he's Charles Xavier's son, so. Like I said, I don't need them to make the show and have like the X-Men showing up every 5 seconds. I don't even need them showing up. I just need something that ties it to the world.
Well, this is like a origin story type, of course, but he's still I don't know, maybe mid-20s, and basically he breaks out of his.
I know that like keeping him like at an asylum, and and they can't figure out what's wrong with him. And stuff, and it all sounds very interesting. I'll probably make an effort to like be able to watch it, but I don't think I can watch it on TV.
Melanie Bird, does that name sound familiar to you?
No.
That's who. I guess not really a spoiler, but that's who she's apparently the leader of some group of mutants. I'm not sure exactly. It kind of left us hanging at the end of the episode, but that's at the end. You get to meet her character.
Okay.
I didn't know if you would recognize that name.
No, I don't think so. But I mean, she could be a comic character. There's certain lots of X-Men stuff I've lost track of over the years.
Yeah, I mean, this
Uh,
is one I totally was green on, man, which is kind of why I was interested to watch it
yeah,
because I don't have anything to really compare it to like or dislike, on the
yeah, that's good.
source
But well, like
material.
I said, as far as Legion goes, you don't have to worry about that baggage because, like as I've said, they don't in the comics. They've never really known what to do with him. They've just sort of thrown him in here and there. He's caused a problem, and then he's like gone away again. Like he's not a consistent there. They like invented him. They're like, oh, this will be cool. Like, imagine if Charles Xavier had a son. He had all these powers and stuff. And yeah, but in the years since, like, yeah, it's just like every once in a while he shows up and causes some sort of problem. Then it's like he's gone and nobody talks about him. And then he shows up again and stuff. Technically, he's I know you've heard of the Age of Apocalypse storyline.
Mhm.
That whole thing where that alternate reality where Apocalypse rules the world and stuff. He caused that
Okay.
because what he did was in one of his moments of lucidity, he wanted to help his father, and he thought, the biggest problem in my father's life has been Magneto. Magneto is the biggest thing standing in his way of this whole idea of, humans and mutants getting along, and my father's too nice to do anything about it. So I'll kill Magneto. And and he uses his powers, he goes back in time. He plans to go back in time to Israel, to around the time when he was born, to kill Magneto before he and his father become like real friends, something like that. The X-Men sort of find out about this and chase him back in time to stop it. And what happens is they fail, but instead of killing Magneto, he winds up killing his own father because he gets in the way. So he causes this weird time paradox thing, and that's where the reality starts in and stuff. And that's why, like, instead. So now Charles Xavier is dead. So 10 years earlier than he would have, Apocalypse reveals himself to the world to blah, blah, blah. The X-Men were never formed, except now the X-Men are going to be formed, except now they're formed by Magneto and all that stuff. So yeah, technically it was Legion that caused the Age of Apocalypse. There's a little mini-series leading into it called Legion Quest that details what happens there.
That's cool. I've got to check some of that out. I really fell off of X-Men. It was one of my favorite comics, but maybe mid '90s, late '90s is when I quit.
Yeah, 90s X-Men to me was definitely the best. And you
Yeah.
know what? And I've actually, even in all my years of comic book buying, only very early on, like around 2004, was I really following an X title. And I have to tell you, like, since then, I haven't at all. But what happened, speaking of the 90s, and I'm going to start again, is as soon as maybe even now, they might even be out, I forgot to look for it, is remember how in the 90s, in the two X-Men titles, they broke the teams into two teams. One was called Blue and one was called Gold.
Mm-hmm.
Well, right now, they're releasing two books. There's going to be X-Men Blue and X-Men Gold. They're coming out, and I don't know what they're going to be like, but I think I'm going to start getting one. Because
cool.
that was always my favorite iteration of the X-Men for sure. Was those early '90s X-Men with the gold team and the blue team. I love that stuff. I love the look of it. I mean, a lot of people did. That's for a while. There was a title called X-Men '92, which was just basically set in back then
Because people liked it so much.
because people like it so much, right? Yeah, so pretty cool.
Wow.
But yeah, I'll have to look into that because no, there's probably no like team book in all of Marvel or DC that like has like disappointed me more than X-Men over the years, and that how much I liked it and how much it changed and turned into something I didn't like. And I mean, I get it; it's a hard thing to do in comics. You can't just keep writing the same things. You have to take chances and do new things. And I liked what Grant Morrison did with New X-Men, but what he did sort of kickstarted all this other stuff that came after that I didn't like, and I don't blame him for that or anything. I don't know. But yeah, so now there's just all these characters related to the X-Men that like I barely even know just because I haven't been reading those books and stuff. And again, I don't want to just say, oh, everything new sucks, or I don't care. Oh, I don't know about this character because they're new, because there's plenty of new stuff that's good. But yeah,
I just feel like
it's difficult to sift through.
They're mining comics like crazy right now, so you really don't know what's worthwhile and what's not.
I know. I mean, I understand that it's great that there's more like demand and comics are doing well and stuff like that, and I want there to be more jobs for people and stuff. But part of me just thinks I wish they'd streamline a bit. It seems like there's just too many fucking titles. There's just too many titles. Can't you cut some of these down? Especially, it's just annoying when some of these titles run for like 8 or 9 issues and then get canceled or they reboot or
Yeah.
something. That's the main thing. Like even comics that I like stop starting them over at number 1 every like few issues. It's driving me insane. Like it's hard enough to take care of my comics and store them and stuff. Just stop starting over things. Why has Daredevil gone through like 4 volumes in the last like 5 or 6 years? Why? Why did you need to push the restart button and say back to number 1, back to number 1, back to number 1? I
Well,
get it. People, I mean, part of it, I know the answer is that number 1s sell.
yeah,
Even though nobody really believes that they're worth anything anymore, people are still always a little interested. They're like, oh, this is a beginning. This is a jumping on point. So
right.
let's do it. But stop fucking doing it. There's just too many. It's driving me insane.
It's whenever there's another, a new movie comes out or a new TV show comes out. There's got to be a new.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah, exactly.
Over
And I mean, I can be glad about that for this because you know how I said how much I'm looking forward to the new Iron Fist show. Well, guess what's coming out in March?
Oh,
A new Iron Fist series, which I'm happy about because at the moment there isn't one. But it would have been annoying if, there'd been an ongoing one and they're like, just start at number 1 again. But yeah, man, it just happens way too much where like you'll have a run and it's like an established character. So it's not like sales are going to lag and it's like, okay, because I get it. Sometimes, it runs for 30 issues. That's a pretty good run. That's kind of the end of it for now. But when you have somebody like Daredevil or Spider-Man, that are always going to sell, like stop starting over. Drives me crazy. I mean, you can have a new storyline and a new creative team, but you don't have to start over with the numbering.
Well, my plan is to use this to get my daughter into comics because she watched the first episode with me and she really liked it.
Oh, yeah.
My older daughter, she's 7 now, and I'm hoping I can maybe shoehorn some comics in with her liking this show. So,
yeah, for sure.
Fingers crossed, but I got to tread lightly because whenever they're gonna revolt against whatever you want them to do, so you got to act like you don't want them to do that.
There's lots of really like girly comics too that could be a good like sort of gateway.
That's true.
To think about like that is one thing where the genre or the medium has sort of benefited is in the last 2 years. Like, it used to be like, oh, everybody thought comics were for kids and they aren't really. And then it was, look how sophisticated and good comics can be. Now that there's actually a separation. So now that there are comics that are for kids. So, so that is kind of a good thing. It's like, if a kid was interested in comics and stuff and you're like, okay, I don't think you should be reading about, 0 Hour
sure
or Final Crisis or something like that. Here's some, more simple stuff that you can just have fun with as a kid. And in the case of girls, there's maybe some more girly things that, could be pretty cool.
Yeah, I really hate to push that kind of stuff.
Oh, I don't mean push it. Yeah, because
no, but I mean,
you don't want to be condescending or anything.
Yeah, it's
okay, like
girls play with dolls and boys play with guns, or
Yeah, oh yeah, exactly.
I've really tried to steer away from that.
No, I just meant if she had those sort of sensibilities is all I meant.
No, sure. And whatever, whatever she's into.
Yeah.
Because, whatever gets them reading, I think is good.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. So,
but that's my plan here because I'm going to buy some of those issues you mentioned. I was actually looking in April, they're releasing the omnibus.
Of which one?
It's Legion. It's X-Men Legacy 1 through 24.
Oh, okay. X-Men Legacy. That's an interesting one.
Yeah. So.
Legion's in that. That's probably where he's at his most heroic because in that version he's like completely together. Like there's nothing wrong with him. It's like he can kind of finally live up to his potential. Because the whole thing about Legion is like he'd be like this really powerful, crazy, great mutant, but the problem is he's so messed up he can't really do anything with it. But yeah, in that it's kind of like he can be like whole.
That's cool.
So he's actually kind of important in it.
That may be what they're basing him on for the show.
Yeah. Well, I imagine for most of the show he'll be pretty messed up. I guess the idea is he'll start to sort of maybe get himself together and figure out how to use his powers properly. I would assume that would be what the show is going to do. It's going to be like him figuring out who he is and how to like deal with it and control his powers and stuff. I'd assume.
This is cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back into some of this stuff.
I love his hair in the comics. In the comics, he has like hair that goes like up to here.
It's like a
It's like
flat top or something.
yeah,
It's
yeah, and
like
it's like
a
super
chimney.
high. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Um, well,
I
cool,
guess
man.
we'll
You
wrap
want
up. Any yeah, closing thoughts on the '97 Insomnia?
to? I really enjoyed it. It's probably not what you would expect going into it. You know, like you
Hmm.
said, it's
Yeah.
not a typical crime drama
Hmm.
as you might expect. More of a character study.
Yeah.
But yeah, totally worth it. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Um,
I really
I
enjoyed
enjoyed
it
it
too.
more this time than the previous time I watched it.
Yeah.
So that was good.
It's a movie I've just certainly appreciated the more I've watched it, and yeah, I like it a lot. It's a character study. I like its style because I think it really does actually capture a lot of those feelings and things that come with insomnia. I like all the white walls. I like the light coming in through. I like some of those fast movements of the camera. I like the way the music is kept very minimalistic. There's almost none. Yeah, stuff like that. And Stellan Skarsgård really makes it work because he gives a really good performance. He really has a good understanding of the character. It's a very complex character that nobody can really say anything definitive about. He's just this type of character that's interesting to just speculate about. Everybody will have their own opinion on it, which is good. But yeah, and like you said, it subverts the expectations. At first, you think maybe it's going to be the classic detective chasing the killer thing, cat and mouse thing, and then it's more about the detective dealing with his own issues, coming up against a killer who's not really that dangerous or that calculating or that bad, and even finding out he has some things in common with the guy, and some of the stuff, the banality is actually what makes the movie work because it just hits you in the head of like some of the real worldness of it. Like here's this guy, he's a writer. This happened, he's got his problems, but he's not some cold calculating killer necessarily. They play that up a little bit more in the remake, as we'll talk about. Yeah, and we'll revisit some of it next week too when we talk about the remake. I'm interested to watch the remake again because
Yeah,
it's a movie that I haven't seen all the way through since I saw it in the theater in 2002. I remember parts of it, but then there's parts I don't remember at all, pretty much. But I certainly liked it at the time. There's definitely good things about it as we'll get into. But this movie, yeah, I think this movie just has a really cool style to it, and there's yeah, I'm not aware of too many movies that talk too much about insomnia or sleep and things like that. And I'm not an expert or anything. Everybody has their own experiences, but sleep has always been a very challenging part of my life. I've not only do I have like a sleeping disorder, but like the sleeping disorder I have now is completely different than the sleeping disorder I had when I was in my teens. Like my sleeping problems, it kind of amounts to the same thing. I have trouble sleeping, but it's completely different reasons and circumstances and stuff. So I understand how complicated and complex it can get, and this movie can't just be like the be all end all of it. But I think the parts that it does show, it hits home pretty well, and I like that a lot. I think it's pretty cool, and it's a clever idea, as I said. Setting it somewhere up there at the midnight sun, the sun not going down, and being under that kind of stress of an investigation, and then the mistakes he's making, and you can imagine his character, who's already a kind of a messed up guy anyway, going through this thing where like he keeps trying to sleep, but instead he's just relentlessly, the sun coming in and all the stuff bouncing around his head and stuff. And then I know the feeling of lying there for hours and then just getting up and realizing it's not going to happen and then just going on with your day. And it's a
yeah,
really weird thing. You get this kind of weird seasick feeling as you're walking around the world, especially if it's bright sunlight. You're out walking around the world and you're surrounded by people and you realize that every single person around you, they all slept last night and you didn't. It's an interesting feeling for sure.
you know,
Yeah, but yeah, cool movie. Glad to get something Norwegian in there.
totally,
We'll continue to do some more foreign movies as we go, Asian, European, whatever. All good stuff.
sure. And yeah, remember to give us recommendations and comments below or on the Twitter
Hmm.
channel as well.
Yeah,
So
we're open to suggestions for sure. I always like to hear what you guys are interested in, or yeah.
and if you've seen this film, let us know what you think of it.
Yep. And again, we're going to do the remake next week, so if you have anything to say about the remake, you can save it for next week, and we will get into discussion about how the movies compare to each other and how they match up, etc. For sure. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, it definitely will be.
All right, then. Thanks a lot for watching. From the Pocket Dimension, I'm Cole. This is Jay. We're saying thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you all again really soon. Have a good week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.